Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Legend Fiction Show. I'm Dominic, founder of Legend Fiction, and today I'm joined by Keith Haydenson from out in Vegas. Aren't you, Keith? And you're an author. You've got a couple of novels under your belt, fascinating backstory, and you've said you just this past weekend or this past month went to Author Nation out in your neck of the woods. You also went to the Legend Haven Con, which was pretty cool having you with us. So it'd be fun to get your thoughts about how that went. And then you said you picked up some pretty interesting stuff at Author Nation, thoughts about yourself and your own writing progress. And so I'm curious to just chat with you. I read your book, Prompted Hearts, which was just intriguing and it got me thinking. I enjoyed that. Really, gosh, you have an amazing writing style. You're one of those authors, I'm reading it and I'm like, I should just give up. Like, I'm never going to be this good. Okay. And then I have to be humble and recognize I'm trying to do something different. You're doing something different,
Exactly. Different
Anyhow,
game.
so let's talk about your latest book. What are you working on? What are you writing right now? And then let's get into your story and then talk about your thoughts about Author Nation. But what's your latest book?
So my latest book is a prequel to my first novel. It's called Sirius and Limnic: Escape from Okinawa Type B. It's a mouthful, but essentially
Okay.
it's a sci-fi horror novel about three brothers, and they are in this wartime situation where Okinawa has been taken over, and the whole goal is for them to escape. But of course,
Okinawa was taken over by.
it's taken over by Chinese forces and
Okay.
occupied. And
Okay.
so in that situation, the brothers are in a military situation, and this is very much after my own heart. I'm a military veteran. I spent 5 years living in Okinawa. I have three brothers, and so this is probably one of the most personal novels I've ever written.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm exploring that relationship between my family and this place that I love, Okinawa. This was an idea that was kind of born out of my traveling around Okinawa because some people know Okinawa, the island, but they don't know that there's tons of little islands off of Okinawa. And so
Okay.
my wife and I visited each one of these, many of them, and they all have their own little personal flavors. So I kind of joked
Really?
to her one time. I was like, yeah, it would be cool if there was a story set here. There's just a reason to go to all the different islands and kind of showcase each island's kind of specialty
Wow.
and kind of
How long have
folklore.
you been dreaming of creating that story then?
This has been 4 years. So we
4 years?
moved back to
Okay.
Okinawa in 2021. My
Okay.
wife's still in the military, so we moved then. And yeah, we just started kind of re-exploring the island. And I had lived there previously when I was active
Okay.
duty as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's where this idea has been brewing, and it's been one of those projects where I'm like, okay, this year, this year, this year,
Nice.
and then finally I'm like, okay, 2025, this novel will be done by
Wow.
2026, and so right
Where are
now
you at in the process of finishing it?
I'm probably like approaching halfway, but
Amazing.
it's
I was going
ambit
to say if you had a cover to wave around, but okay, so
no
it's
cover.
still being written. How is it a sci-fi horror? I think you said.
Yeah, so
What are those
Sirius,
elements?
yeah, so Sirius and Limnic, the first novel is very speculative. So I
Okay.
take my and I call it sci-fi horror to make it approachable to people, but really I made it my own genre because military sci-fi doesn't really fit. There's no space marines. We're not in space. We're in a very contemporary setting, but
Mhm.
I like to comment on society and technology. And
Mhm.
so the sci-fi comes in is that there's futuristic weapons, there's futuristic. I basically take modern warfare and extrapolate it like, well, what if this, what if
Mhm.
that, and just really see where those elements would be on the battlefield and off the battlefield as well. So the influence is really, if you've ever played the Metal Gear Solid games,
I haven't, no.
okay, so this is
Thumbs
those
up in chat if you have. Go ahead, people say hi in the comments if you
right.
did.
If in the comments you know Metal Gear Solid, so it's created by Hideo Kojima, one of a personal hero of mine, but really kind of weird. But it's a mix of sci-fi, psychological horror. It centers around this operative named Solid Snake. Most of the games do, and he's
Mhm.
usually got like futuristic technology, but then there's usually some bigger conspiracy. But it's very character and narrative driven. So that was the
Wow.
influence behind this particular novel. And then it's horror because this is essentially my second try at horror. I
Okay.
wrote my second novel is horror, but then my wife read it and was like, this ain't scary. So I was like, okay. So I messed up on that one because I'm not a horror guy. I'm like a half
Yeah.
glass half full kind of guy in general. So I'm like, okay, I
Okay.
do like horror as a genre though, and I've been consuming more of it lately. So I'm like, okay, how
Yeah.
can I like make this not every scene being scary, but
Right.
it's more of a dread because when I don't
Nice.
know if you ever been to Okinawa? Have you ever been
I
to
haven't. No. Closest I got was rewatching Karate Kid 2 50 times.
Got it. So Okinawa is a place full of just rich history and a lot of folklore, local ghost stories and things like that.
Wow.
When you're
Yeah.
on the island, there's kind of this, it feels like there's presence kind of around, especially like you
Mm.
get to the more silent parts of the island. And I lived on several islands throughout my life, and
Mm-hmm.
Okinawa is one of those where it can be totally crazy and bustling and mixed, and you hear Japanese, English, Chinese, Korean in some parts,
Mm-hmm.
but then you go to some parts, it's just whisper, kind of creepy, haunted house, quiet. And it's that
Wow.
juxtaposition between the bigger parts of my story and then the quiet, like the unseen parts. That's where the horror comes
Mm-hmm.
in. Yeah.
I'm really intrigued to ask. So you mentioned you're watching a bunch of horror movies. I want to ask you about those in a minute.
Yeah.
But what lessons did you learn from your wife saying you missed the boat on this one? How did you not land it? And what are you now trying to sort of correct that? Like, yeah, what are your takeaways from that?
So the where I messed up is, well, I didn't really mess up, but it was just the story that I was trying to tell in my second
It
novel.
was more of like a thriller, is what it actually ended up
It
being,
was
or
more of like a thriller and adventure novel.
suspense?
So it centers
Okay.
around a military spouse who's an English teacher in Okinawa, and she has to essentially stop demons from taking over the island. But then
Mhm.
there's her students that are kind of formed this group that, okay, this is save the world plot but shrunk down.
Mhm.
So one, it's a smaller scale story. Two, it really focuses on the dynamics between the students, because I didn't want it to be just like Captain Planet ish, to where you've got, heart, fire, this, that. I wanted them to actually have,
You're
but
the
you know what I'm talking
second
about.
person who's made that reference, as opposed to like, gosh, what are those? They're all wearing colored suits and stuff.
Oh, the Power
I
Rangers.
forget. Power Rangers. That's the only thing comparable, and I never even watched that either. But you're the second person to make a Captain Planet reference.
But that's what it feels like. They each have
Yeah.
their own kind of powers, but then they also have interpersonal dynamics as well. So the horror comes in how they relate to themselves and the island, and then the demons
Okay.
that they fight, those are
Hmm.
ripped straight from Japanese folklore.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where I kind of didn't stick the landing, because it was focused on those characters, and
Okay.
the entire scenario wasn't very mature. It's just like, okay, it's a teacher and her students save the world, essentially. That's what it is.
Gotcha.
More
If
adventure.
you were to go back and rewrite it, which you won't, but if you were, what would you do to like turn it from adventure, thriller, suspense, dark something into actually being a horror thing? What are some things that you would do different?
I would have it, I would take out the scaffolding, because it's called Gates of Okinawa. So there's 7 gates around Okinawa that open up, and then demons come out, and they have to seal the gates. That's the scaffolding. I feel like
Okay.
when you have that type of scaffolding, it lends itself more to an adventure, because we've got
Interesting.
we're at gate 3 out of 7. We're at gate 4. So you have that
Okay.
map. It's like a video game. Whereas
Gotcha.
in certain games where they don't give you the map, you don't
Hmm.
know. I'm playing right now All Night Silk Song. I don't know if you've heard of this game.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm playing this game right now, and it feels more horror-ish. One of the reasons is they have this disorientation. You don't get the
Okay.
maps default. You have to buy the maps, then you have to explore the area to fill out the maps. You need a compass, you need a quill to write down. So it has this kind of disorientating effect. And I think that's one of the
Interesting.
things I would
Okay.
take away if I was to rewrite it. Take that out,
Wow.
take out the students as well, because there's these kind of comedic. That's what I like a little bit of comedy. If you remember a little bit in Prompted Hearts, where
Yeah.
there are some comedic parts that are exaggerated, but at the same time, I like that it's always about characters for me. That's where I
Hmm.
start, and that's where I finish with all of my
Yeah.
stories.
You nailed intense characterization
Yeah.
with that novel. So now you're writing, and I'm not going to try your new title. So now you're doing this new sci-fi horror. What are some things that what you just described? Is that now how you're going about the process of making it a horror novel? You're removing the scaffolding. You're making it more personality focused, less.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I did is I turned it into an epistolary. So this is basically like a case file.
And that okay, case file.
Yeah,
Okay.
so epistolary is just telling stories through, like, classic, it's letters. And I've done this before.
Okay.
I wrote a small novella called Shadow Band a couple of years
Okay.
ago, and this was essentially posts on, then at the time, Twitter, emails, and this is an entire story based on that. And that's how it's presented. This story is basically you're getting the perspective of the archivist, and she is investigating the events in Okinawa 50 years in the future. And so you
Okay.
get this case file, and it's that disorientating effect, where in Gates of Okinawa, it was all just linear. You just
Hmm.
next story, next chapter. But this one is like we kind of screw you up a little bit to where it's like you're pulling documents out of a nasty folder, and that's basically the opening chapter
Hmm.
is her getting the delivery of the files and being like, "Holy shit, I'm in for it."
I want to read this when you're done. That sounds awesome. So you've mentioned that you've got, honestly, you said something really cool earlier about military background, and then you traveled.
Yeah,
You've now traveled a bunch. You're now at Vegas, and you looking at modern tech, and then just thinking about what can come next. That's a whole nother conversation. I'd be really curious to get your thoughts about evolution of tech or near future versus far future stuff. We've
for
got a
sure.
series in Legend Fiction where we just published it. Anyway, it's called Thrill Runners, and we set it like 100 years in the future, and it's a bunch of adventurous teens going around the world trying to rescue artifacts, and nobody knows exactly why they're so dangerous. But I'd be genuinely interested to have you come write a story for one of those anthologies
I'd
because you
love
do
to.
something really cool with that.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about your writing process. I mean, are you part of the 30 days sort of writing challenge? Everyone's kind of got the ghost of NaNoWriMo
Hmm.
on their mind. Are you following that right now as well in your own
I
way?
am. I am. Yeah. So I've been doing at least. I've been thinking of you guys, man. I've been doing at least 1,000 words a day. I did 1,300 this
Oh,
morning.
amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I try and write every day. I try and
Hmm.
write new words every day, and that's a challenge, especially when you're
Yeah.
working on long-term projects like a novel, because you're like, well, I really should go back and revise this and edit that, and now I need to
Hmm.
post on my website or on social media or something like that. So it's really been a challenge balancing all of that. But yeah, the new words take priority because I mean, and
Amazing.
that's my bread and butter. I love
How do you do that? What's your ritual around getting in the zone, getting the words done? How long does it take you? You're wiped by the end of it. Like, how do you stay sane?
So early on, back in 20, when I was writing my first novel, I trained myself because at the time I wasn't writing full time.
Mhm.
I was like a lot of people during the pandemic. I had lost my job. I was transitioning to become a teacher. I was in teacher training. The pandemic ripped off the day after my birthday. The
What
day
kind of
after my
teacher were you training to be?
math. So I
Math.
eventually did get certified in high school math. So I taught algebra
Okay.
1. And people were like, why do you want to do math? Like, I was the only math guy in my cohort because I don't know. I was like,
Okay.
because I want a job, because I don't want.
Yeah. And nobody else wants it. So
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
guaranteed money, right?
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. And then COVID.
Yeah, and then COVID. So during COVID, I had like a temporary tutoring job, and then eventually I did get hired on. So I trained myself to write on my phone, and this
Okay.
took a good 6 months for me.
With a pop out keyboard or just
Nope,
thumbs?
just thumbs.
Okay.
So I trained myself to do that, and I'm really good at writing in short bursts. And I know
Okay.
I'm kind of weird in that sense because a lot of writers I've met, they have to sit down for an hour or two, and they'll take breaks or whatever. But that chunk is their writing time. That's
Mhm.
the way majority of writers work. I'm good at 25 minutes here, 10 minutes there. If I can get
Got it.
100, if I can get 300 words, if I get 50 words, I don't care as
Mhm.
long as I get some words down. So, and then lately it's the first thing I do when I get up. I'm like, and I'm an early morning guy, so it'll be like 4:30, 5 a.m.
Mm.
and I'm like, okay, let's hit the words. Let's get going. And I do a lot of Pomodoros as well. I do a lot of like 25-minute sprint, 15-minute
Mhm.
sprint, take a break, and then sit back down and hit it again until I less about word count and more about idea completion. So
Yeah.
usually when I get to the end of a scene, if I get to end of writing a character or something like that, then I feel like I'm done. So the word count has become less relevant over the last few years.
Mhm. How long have you been writing?
Yeah, my writing goes back, man. So I started keeping a journal. Did you ever see the movie Butterfly Effect? Ashton Kutcher back in the day?
Oh man, that's a long time ago.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
did.
Okay, so that movie, that was the impetus for my writing because
Ooh, why? Remind me what the story's about
so the
briefly, if you would.
story is I haven't seen it in a long time, but the story is Ashton Kutcher can basically jump time between writing in his journals. And so he
Okay.
has to jump and this is all I remember. Like this was the
Hmm.
biggest part. He writes the journals and then like he'll have to like read them and then he can jump back in time and then he has to like fix mistakes. That's what the main mechanic of the movie is. So that mechanic, I was like, that is so
Yeah.
cool. And I'd always
Yeah.
always loved writing in high school as well, but I didn't do it very casually. So that kicked off my journaling. I
Hmm.
journaled from when that movie came out, which was 2000. I'm gonna date myself. 2004 until 2017. I journaled
Okay.
not every day, but at least
Mhm.
3 to 4 times a week. And in
Wow.
those journals, I would explore, I started out, I did this today, this, whatever. But then
Mhm.
after several years, it was like, okay, let me do a little spin on this. Let me change perspective. Let me write in third person. Let me, write this person that I actually met as a character. Let me
Mhm.
describe this place. And so all the elements were just coming together. And
What
in
would you
20,
say the
yeah.
effect was on you for journaling for that length of period?
I think the biggest thing it got me out of my head. It was basically
Really?
like if I could see the events of my life as an outsider, then one, it
Mhm.
was better for like stress, all the good benefits you get from journaling. I kind of see myself as okay, it's not so bad because and I'm not saying my life was terrible or anything like that, but I'm just saying like it was helpful from that kind of psychological viewpoint. But then it was just practicing all these different practicing dialogue here and there, practicing, okay, what did they say to me? They said something funny, and then try and remember that. And then other times, like kind of extrapolating what really happened to be like deepen the reading experience or the writing experience. I was unconsciously training myself to do what I'm doing now. And I
Mhm.
think the biggest thing is it got me out of my head because that's where a lot of authors struggle. They're like,
Mhm.
they want to write, but they don't want to write the wrong thing. And so I was like, there's no wrong thing here because nobody's reading this. The only person reading
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is me. And
yeah.
so that made everything right. So I got that, okay, just pull the trigger, just sit down. Cause I would do this. I was working, I was active duty military through most of this period.
Mhm.
So I didn't
Okay.
have time to sit there and just stress over this word, this sentence. It was just like, get the idea down and go to bed.
Yeah,
That was because I would usually write at the end of the day to make sure stuff was fresh.
yeah, yeah. Well, $1 million question. Have you time traveled?
I feel like I time travel every time I go back. I mean, I look at them here. I have the whole box of all
Oh,
of
wow, really?
my spirals from
Yeah.
'04 to 17 when I started writing my first book. And that was where I kind of took a break from journaling, but now I'm basically back to it, but I do most of it digitally now. And
Yeah, yeah.
AI has helped a ton with that as far as like dictating.
Say more. How do you use AI for journaling? You know, it's funny, before I ask that fully, I used to keep all of the notes and stories that I would write as a teen. I mean, I've been like you, I've been writing ever since I was, I don't know, 13 or something, tons of stories and novels and ideas and whatever. And I would chart everything down. And by the time I hit like my late teens, early 20s, that became kind of a treasure trove for
Mm,
being able to look back and go, this is what I was prioritizing and thinking, and it was really dumb, and maybe it was really cool. It doesn't matter. But these were the stories that I was trying to turn to make sense of life, or to,
right.
Mary Sue my way through problems and whatnot. Unfortunately, I lost everything when I
Oh,
got married and moved, and that whole
rough.
I mean, it was a thick ass thing of a
Hmm.
folder just with everything going on. I'm sorry that I lost that, because as a dad now and as an adult now, also writing some children's books would have been really helpful for me to go back and look at some of those records and those stories. Like when I was that age, what was I valuing? And so
Mm,
journaling as an author from that standpoint is, I think, a really, really valuable thing.
super
And I'm so
valuable.
interested, you said about getting out of your head. How did it help you get out of your head? Yeah, how did it help you get out of your head?
You just don't question it. I mean, and that's what I've always been more of an extroverted type of guy and more of a, shoot first and ask questions later type of guy, for better or worse, right? My wife would tell me, you're not a planner, blah, blah, blah. I'm not, especially next to her. But I think that's how it got me out of my head was just like, don't second guess this. There's no wrong answers here. And
Mhm.
still think that to myself as I'm writing
Yeah.
my novel. You can't be wrong. Are there better ways to say what you want to say, to write this character or to depict the scene? Sure. But
Hmm.
that's in itself is subjective because I read
Yeah.
stuff all the time where it's like, this feels like bare bones. It feels like there's not much there, but to somebody else, they're filling in
Hmm.
all the gaps. They're getting exactly what they need. And so you are creating the test and you're taking the test at the same time. And you also determine if you pass the test.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to get the words down to
Right.
attempt. So
How are you using AI with your journaling? How is that helpful? What is that process? I've never even thought of that.
yeah, so a little backstory. So I've been using ChatGPT pretty much daily since it came out.
Yeah,
I
me
was
too.
I was a day one guy, and
Hmm.
since then I've built up a lot of context with it. So now the voice mode is insane. It's so good. Like I can literally
I need to
ramble.
check that out again, because
You
it
got
was
to
just annoying like a year and a half ago when I
yeah.
tried it.
Okay, so a year and a half ago, that's ancient history, and it would ChatGPT
Yeah.
years because now for the last since my wife's been gone, my wife's currently on military deployment right now. So she's been gone for
Okay.
about 4 months now. But
Okay.
since she's been gone, I've been dictating pretty much every day. So the voice, I can dictate for like 10 minutes straight, and
Wow.
it will take everything, chunk it down, and either distill it. I've got it to where it will distill it into what I call stubs. And I came
Mhm.
up with a template framework for these stubs where it has like cross references, a summary, like a digest of what I said, and then the meat of its distillation. So occasionally I'll
That's
just get
handy.
my ideas
Mhm.
crunched and compressed into something I can save, and I've been saving these to Google Docs. But then also you'll get, if you ask the AI, you can get the AI's kind of interpretation of what you said. And so this has been great for just, for instance, alternation last week. I said I attended that. Every day I did like at the end of every part of the day, I would do like a debrief. I would just go to my
Mhm.
car, eat lunch, and be like, hey, here's the sessions I attended. Here's what I learned. Here's what happened. And because of that, I've got a whole 5-day distillation of basically
Sweet.
play by play of alternation. I've been doing this for months.
Man.
Yeah, it's
Well, there's
insane.
another question. I want to come back and ask you about the debrief of your debriefs. Before that, have you played around with Notebook? What is it? LLM?
Every day. Use it every day.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. If you were to sell me on it, what would you say? Like, how is it helpful for you? How do you use it?
As a writer, so there's two ways that I use it. First way is taking those distillations, those real
Mhm.
life distillations, and saying, what's the through line here? And so just 2 weeks ago, I had a bunch of these essays that I'd built up by using ChatGPT to distill several topics. And I actually thought of you, by the way, because you mentioned that you did a nonfiction book and that you
Mhm.
used AI to help you kind of break it down. And you were like, hey, this feels like it's publishable. You published it. I was like,
Mhm.
I haven't done a full like nonfiction book of like my creative philosophy or anything like that. So I thought about doing that. But I was like, I don't know what the through line is between all of these essays. I had like 17 of them that I was like,
Okay.
so I used NotebookLM. And what's cool about it is you can steer it. You can do the audio overview, but then you can say, help me find the themes. Help me pull out what was the author me thinking when I
Yeah, yeah.
like, what's the common themes here? And it did it. It gave me a 30-minute
How is
pull out. Good.
That's so interesting. How is Notebook different or better than just having chat do that for you?
The Notebook LM killer feature is the audio overview. So it basically turns all of your documents into a
Mhm.
digestible podcast. Whereas chat, you have to either read it or now you can listen,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's
Okay.
hard to get just sections of your
Yeah.
thoughts and distill it and get the ideas from it in chat. You'd have to find the
It's
individual chats
interesting.
and pull
Yeah.
it out. Yeah.
I guess that might come down to like work style because for me, I tested and tried the whole podcast part of NotebookLM, and for me, I couldn't stand it because
I
I
see.
didn't like sitting around waiting for somebody else to get to their point. I'm a speed reader,
You and my
a
wife.
chronic speed reader,
That
so
is that
I
is my
couldn't sit around
wife.
and wait for it.
She cannot stand audio, and she loves as
I
much
mean,
as she
I
loves
love
me.
it for a podcast. You know, it's
Right.
different. But for when I'm studying my own stuff, it's like I want my information at the speed at which I want it.
I've
So that didn't
always
work for me.
been an audio guy. I'm like an
Gotcha.
auditory learner. One of my favorite classes in college was the professor had an overhead projector. He was no frills. He would put it up, he would slam it up and be like, okay, we're going to talk about the history of India today. And I'm telling you, it's going to be fascinating. And he was a very erudite and he's a college
Nice.
professor. I was intrigued. It was like listening to somebody tell the story of history. And I guess a lot of people were bored. I've
Hmm.
always been an auditory guy. It definitely an unfair advantage these days where you have AI to like
Yeah.
literally talk to you about your
Hmm.
own thoughts, about your own
Yeah.
writing. And this brings me to how I use it for my fiction. So for
Right.
my fiction, I use it to basically fill in gaps. So if you
Hmm.
give it a piece of your fiction, it will basically crunch on it. And if you just use the deep dive feature, it will basically distill what it's about and try to make sense of, okay, what were they trying to say here? It will try and summarize the story. It can pull out
Hmm.
themes and that type of thing.
Hmm.
So I look for places where the AI got it wrong. That's not what I meant to do. That's not what I meant to say. Or that is badass. And I did not intentionally put that in there, but maybe I should go dial that up. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I do is I say, like, I'm writing sci fi horror. I just did this morning, actually. I gave it a chapter that I had written, the 1,300 words I wrote this morning. And I would just like describe the story and tell me what sci fi horror fans might like about this. And so that does a couple of things. One, it tells me, am I hitting my marks? Am I hitting those
Okay.
genre expectations? Am I hitting those tropes?
Hmm.
Sometimes the AI will blow smoke. and it will tell
Right,
you,
right.
like, when you're doing things, when you're not doing things, but then it will at least tell you, okay, I got close. I got in the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ballpark.
I mean, you literally have to be using this tool seriously and intentionally over a long period of time to be able to tell when it is blowing smoke and talking out of
Oh yeah.
what uh what you want and so on. If you're just using it like a couple of times, once or
No,
twice,
yeah,
you're not going to get it. That's why it is valuable to understand this tool really seriously,
absolutely.
because it's incredibly valuable. You said that you write full time. How are you doing that? For those of us who think about it, seems like a promised land, don't know how much work it is. Like, how are you making it work?
So there's two things. One, I got a really nice wife that loves me. Hi, baby. You're not gonna watch this because you don't like podcasts, but
Right.
she loves me
Well,
very
I'll do it.
much.
I'll do a transcript of this so she can burn through it.
I appreciate that. But she supports my stuff, and I found a way to, and then I also do work on the side. Like I do still
Okay.
substitute teach on
Hmm.
occasion, and that's been good. But yeah, I'm fortunate to be in a very privileged position to my wife makes an income for the both of us.
Hmm.
And so we do well for ourselves. And then also over the years we've done very well between the two of us of like saving and just previous decisions have finally started to
Yeah.
pay off. There was a lot of austerity
Yeah.
in the
Oh, I
early
hear that.
days, but we're
Yeah.
finally getting to this part where, okay, all the stuff is paid off. So that's one thing. The second thing, honestly, I know a lot of people can't. Option A is not a lot of people, but here's something that I do, and that everybody can do is that just do it every day, no questions asked. And
Hmm.
for the past 5 years, I can say almost every day, either I was writing something new, I was trying to figure out social media, I was learning a new skill, I was exploring video. Lately, it's been AI. I went through my whole NFT crypto phase where looking into that 2021, 22. Glad that's over. But I
Okay.
went
I
through
got
that
questions
phase.
on that, but we want to get into
Oh
that now.
God, yeah, yeah. There's the dark days, right? I'm,
Okay.
I'm still alive, and I didn't lose my shirt completely. The point is, it's doing it every day, and
Hmm.
that's what it's allowed me to do it full time. Is like, okay, I am in this privileged position because I've gone through it, right? Like when I first got out of the military, I went to study to be a Spanish court interpreter, and I didn't know Spanish at the time, so I had to teach myself Spanish. I did eventually become a freelance interpreter, but back in 2018, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was like, I saw Google Translate. I saw DeepL Translate. I was using them
Hmm.
to help me with like my studies at the time. And I was like, yo, these things are getting really good. I couldn't even anticipate AI. I didn't even think we would get there that fast, but I saw that and I was like, and then it's a very hard process to actually become a professional translator. The tests are ridiculous. And I was in California too, where there's
Okay.
more of a need for that, especially in a language like Spanish, but it was still hard. And so I was like, you know what? This isn't going to work. And this is pre pandemic. So that's
Oh,
when I pivoted to teaching
sure.
and started that up. And so as I was doing that, I started writing and I never stopped.
So 5 years into now being an author almost full time here,
Yeah.
how are you different?
I think the biggest thing that differentiates me is that I'm willing to pull in different different skills together and try and combine because that's always been my thing. I've always loved video games, and so that's been one of my things. Like, how can I make literature more interactive? And you saw this at
Gotcha.
Prompted Hearts, right? You saw this with the QR codes. You saw this where there's more interactivity. So that's one thing. And then my other thing is I'm not afraid to start over. I mean, I've
Yeah.
started over, being a military guy, you start over every few years. And
Hmm.
now it's even worse on the spouse side. Now that I'm not active duty, I don't have anything to plug into. Like when I moved back here to Vegas just a little over a year ago,
Hmm.
I moved from Japan. I hadn't lived in Vegas for over a decade. I don't know anybody
Yeah.
here. I don't have anything
Hmm.
established. The first 6 months were rough, rough. And so, bottom line is getting used to that, starting over,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
it's geographically,
Hmm.
emotionally, or skill wise.
Yeah.
When it
Yeah.
comes to learning things, I've just gotten so used to that over the years that I don't mind
Hmm.
jumping into something like recently I'm drawing a lot just by
Nice.
hand. AI animation is another thing on my target list to
Hmm.
actually make stuff move. I'm not going to say I've mastered audio, but I've gotten really good at audio. I've done a lot of audio in the last several years. So
Nice. Nice.
audio, music production and composition, playing piano, all this stuff is in the last 5 years that I've taught
How
myself.
cool.
I think that's what
Wow.
makes me different. I'm willing to go there and be like, okay, level
Yeah. Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Great answers. I
Yeah.
was actually asking how have you changed as an author? or maybe as a person. Yeah, how have the last 5 years impacted you as a person, as an author?
It's been really something, man. And I love this
Yeah.
question because I feel like that's what entrepreneurship comes down to, because I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit, but I never forced myself to do it. And as you know, on this journey, it is a journey. It's all about the man, the woman in the mirror. You know, every
Hmm.
day, if you're doing it right, you're trying to surpass what that person yesterday was. You're
Right,
trying to
right.
just get a little bit better. And I think it's where a lot of people get stuck because they're like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm crappy at this. I want to write novels, but I'm not a good writer and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you only get good by keep writing novels, even if they're not
Right, right.
good. Like I definitely, my first few novels, they weren't written to any type of audience, just like a lot of people. I
Hmm.
just had an idea and I stuck with it for long enough to publish the book. And as I've gotten over those humps, and last week, I love this question because just last week, that was a huge turnaround with Author Nation to see that
Oh, really?
me doing this, surpassing myself every day, has put me in a place where people were like, wow, you've got a podcast that has over 37,000 streams on Spotify. Like, how did you do that? And I'm thinking to myself, like, I had no idea what the hell I was doing when I was doing that podcast. I didn't
Yeah.
know, I didn't have a good mic. I had a Blue Yeti. I didn't know anything about audio production. I didn't know anything about voice acting. I didn't know anything about sound design. I didn't know anything about music. All I had was the book. That was it. I didn't know anything about video at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just that, okay, I figured that out by just keep doing it every day. And for some reason, people are listening to that show. Like
Hmm.
every month, it gets like 100 plus streaming hours. I'm like, how?
Amazing.
I don't know.
That's amazing. All right, let's talk about that. So you said you went to Author Nation and you
Yeah.
did all those debriefs, and
Yeah.
you said that you were really pleasantly surprised that you are further along than you thought you were.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What were your takeaways? How are you further along? Like, what surprised you? And yeah, talk about your podcast.
Yeah, so the big thing that I took away was that the industry, you know, whether people like it or not, and this is one of the reasons we connected, is that AI is here to stay.
Mhm.
The first day was the expo, and there were AI companies I had never even heard of. There were straight
Really?
up AI companies. There were traditional publishers they had AI QR codes. Pseudo Write came out. ACX was there. There was another.
Hold on. What the heck is an AI QR code? I've never even heard of that.
Oh, I just meant QR codes that like to their AI like stuff, to their
Oh,
AI
okay. Sorry,
offerings and
gotcha.
that type of thing. But yeah, the bottom line is the industry, at least the indie side of
Hmm.
publishing, they are taking it seriously. Like, and they acknowledge, a lot of people acknowledge that, hey, it's hard out there right now. It's hard
Hmm.
to get noticed. It's hard to cut through the noise. It's hard to decide what to do
Hmm.
because are you going to go more video? Are you going to go more audio? Are you going to just focus on getting more books out? Are you going to focus on things like this in person, getting your books in stores? There was talks about all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, it was just like options for you to choose. But
Hmm.
what I took away was that I've already gone down a lot of those paths, the AI audio route, the video route, the social media route. I spent years on social media trying, mostly failing at it, but it turned out to be one of those compounding things that has paid off in the long run. But I never had really anything go viral that I wanted to
Hmm.
go viral that
Right.
was for my writing. And so that was the biggest thing where I said I'm further along than I thought because a lot of people were just discovering some of these avenues for the first time.
Right.
They
Wow.
they had no idea because they spent so much time, like a lot of indies do, like a lot of us do. They're writing. They're trying to figure out the writing. Like, how do I get to the writing? How do I do it consistently? How do I like
Yeah.
it? How do I do it while putting food on the table and keeping lights on? That is the indie struggle because there's
Hmm.
no guarantees. Every day you could spend hours writing and nobody will ever read that.
Mm.
That's the
Right.
indie curse. But that's where I realized that, okay, I've written enough books to know my process. I've written enough books to know how publishing works. I know how to go from Word doc to book in my hand, handing it out to somebody.
Hmm.
I know how to, and apparently I know how to sell books pretty well because I sold two people at the conference, which I did not plan because these are other authors, right? I sold over $200 worth of books.
Hey, go you.
Yeah. And I would
Did
just
you have a
carry it
table or
around.
you just walk? Oh, you're just carrying it around.
Most of this was
Okay.
during the conference itself. Like there was Reader Nation at the end where we had tables and it was the kind of hawk your books and stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, most of my sales were just that's a cool concept. I'll buy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that, so after that weekend, it's so interesting about the whole indie side of things and how fast it's moving. Like it's just
Yeah.
incredibly fast. What are some things that maybe depressed you about this side of the market? And if anything gave you like real excitement or hope, just got you going about thinking about the next couple of years, new opportunities or options?
Yeah, most depressing thing was just you named it, the velocity. It is
Mm.
so fast and there are so many options. Like I went to a Kickstarter briefing. That's been one of the things that I've been kicking around is doing
Hmm.
a Kickstarter. I had been hesitant to do it because I wasn't really informed about how they worked, but now I understand how they work. But then I'm like, man, if I do a Kickstarter, that's a whole nother path that I've got to commit to. And I think that's the biggest thing that I try to do. What another separator that I have from a lot of indie authors is once I start a path, I don't get off until I finish, or at least get to some type of stopping point. Whereas a lot of
Hmm.
indies are just getting pulled, and I've been in that phase before, where you're like, oh, let me try this, let me try that, let me start this project. Oh, this one's appealing now. This one's a little boring. No, I try not to get pulled off. So that's the most depressing thing is that there are people out there who are doing a book a day and they don't really care about craft. And we talked about this a little
Hmm.
bit. There's AI YouTube channels, there's completely AI voiced audiobooks now. Like it's all there. The infrastructure is there. There are people actively using these tools and they don't care about craft. They don't really care. All they care about is get something out to market that people are going to buy and read. And it's totally possible to do that with AI. In
Hmm.
fact, once we finish, I'll tell you about a project that I'm working on. It's kind of it's
Okay.
not I won't share with the audience, but I'll tell you offline. But
There you go,
point
folks. That's what comes from being a really cool host. People tell you cool stuff.
exactly. It'll give Dominic the inside
Your
track.
point about people generating AI stuff,
Yeah,
you're right about the fact that it can be done. And I suspect what'll happen is it can't be sustained.
absolutely. Yeah, I think so.
And I think that's kind of the point you and I were chatting about last time we were meeting was that there's so much slop that is created. Like you say, a book a day, and there's groups you
Yeah,
can join, and there's gurus who will show you how to do it. But then you don't know what's in there. You can't stand behind what's in there. The quality,
absolutely.
the audio recordings can't communicate. I mean, it's not even communicating what you want because you don't even know what you're doing.
Exactly.
It just seems obvious to me that it's really valuable these tools exist because in the right hands they can be fantastic, and in the wrong
Absolutely.
hands it's just like slop and black hat SEO stuff 10 years ago that was like spamming and flooding the internet. We all wised up, we didn't want it. The algorithms played it down to resurface
Hmm.
actual intentionally crafted stuff that was now more smartly produced, that better targeted the right people and used tools the right way. I see that at some point the bubble will burst from the stupid and we'll get back to good people, at least maybe not good, but people using these tools the way that they can actually
Right.
serve a goal or help people. So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it comes down to two things. One, can you stand behind this work? And I would say a lot of people, because I notice in a lot of these AI, book a day groups and that type of thing,
Mhm.
they're anonymous. They
Yeah.
won't come out with it because, and I get that because you can't really speak to it. All you can speak to is the sales graph that said, "Hey, look, this many people bought it," and that's fine. You made thousands of
Yeah.
dollars, which I've seen some of them have. But if I came up and asked you about that book, could you tell me really what it's about? Probably not if it's completely AI generated. The second thing I'd say is it's the level of risk that you're putting into
Mhm.
it. Good
Mhm.
art actually requires risk. It requires you to put something of yourself. And you could argue that, any AI, even if it's AI one button push generated, there is something of you in there. And I would argue that's true. But how much of the risk is in there? How much of
Mhm.
you is in there? If it's the answer is like 5%, then that is the type of thing that is unsustainable. That's not going to last.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
eventually, if you sell millions of copies and become a New York Times bestseller and $1 million, whatever, and somebody, hey, how'd you do these stories, all this stuff? And you're just like, I just hit the AI button. And I'm sure some people will do that. There's going to be those people. But
Mhm.
I don't think that's what people are going to resonate with. I don't think
Yep. Yep.
people are going to resonate with it in the long
I
run.
agree with that. And
Yeah.
I don't think that kind of thing is I don't think it's interesting or wanted or it'll last. I think there will always be a group of people who are interested to see what can be commissioned from a machine.
Hmm.
And there's a place for that and it's interesting. But in terms of um, like you say, standing behind something where you are sharing something that is helpful or interesting or communicating something you've got going on, you want to bring that to other people. I think these tools are fantastic for people
Absolutely.
who maybe can't learn a skill because so many reasons in their life. And there's a massive difference between somebody going,
Yep.
I want to make $1 million and not put any work into it,
Right.
And then there's somebody who's like, I want to learn I've got things I want to communicate visually or through words, but I can't word good because I never learned it. And I don't have
Right.
time because
Absolutely.
trauma or family or life is impossible.
Whatever.
And so I'm going to commission a machine to help me do this. It's like these really rich people who commission a ghostwriter. Maybe they're not rich, but the
Same thing.
ghostwriter comes in and sort of does half the work, but you actually have done the work of like getting your story out there, and then you've commissioned somebody to help you to craft it. It's partly there's like that risk, like you're saying, but there's also the actual investment of you into a thing. And I think that's what over time, that's what we're looking for, and that's what we want. I remember somebody who said as soon as the whole AI thing and AI art came out and stuff, and he was like, overnight, every genuine artist became a luxury commodity.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yeah.
technically, they always were. We didn't think of ourselves that way,
Mm-hmm.
and now with AI, they definitely are.
Right.
But the upside is, I think, a lot of people who could never have hired an artist ever anyway, now still have a chance, not a guarantee. They have a chance to commission an output from a machine to communicate something of value to the human family. And that's very
Absolutely.
different. I'm not arguing with you, but
No,
that's
no.
very different
No,
to
yeah, I agree.
those who are out there literally trying to scam, who are forever scamming, spamming, slop shipping. I don't know. Those are things that are always playing on my mind about, it's such a gray zone, but there is a fine line
Absolutely.
between that.
And I think one of the last things I want to say about Author Nation is I think you hit something that an industry truth that as much as we indies and writers in general don't like to admit it, but it's true based on what I saw at Author Nation. It's that the professionals, the highest tier authors, I mean, and James Patterson was the keynote speaker, right? And James Patterson, it's well known that he deeply outlines his books and then he'll use a co-writer equivalent of a ghostwriter. They're not usually ghostwriters at his level. They're people he knows.
Yeah.
Like one of his
Collaborators.
one of his famous collaborators was actually there in person and he facilitated that. But the point is, the pros of the industry all have this algorithmic process. They have the vision, they set the tone, the characters, what the story wants to say, and it's a co-writer, it's a ghostwriter, whatever you call them. It's in my mind, and people will probably in the comments blow up after this, but I don't care. It's very similar to using AI. It's almost the exact same thing.
Right.
You are
It's that same
setting.
stack.
It's
And
the
now
same
it's just
stack.
made available to the bottom of the market,
Absolutely.
which I think is an insanely beautiful,
I think it's
potentially,
great
again,
too.
it's always can. It's
Right.
an amazing gift to now be able to offer the human family, most of whom will never be able to function at that sort of high educational
No
level.
way.
And
Yeah.
there's also no competing for what it's worth. Like you're generating stuff, you're commissioning stuff down at that level. I like Brandon Sanderson, who came out
Mm.
on a recent reel, and he said, if you're creating art with a machine, generating art more technically, you're not an artist. Don't call yourself that. I think he's absolutely right.
I
You're an
think so
art
too.
director. You
I think so too.
commissioned. And I think it's a really excellent way to think about that.
Me too.
Don't attribute a skill or an excellence, that somebody who actually has put in the time. And so this goes back then to your point. We got to start to wrap here. Your point earlier about you are the point when it comes to your creativity. All of the books and
Absolutely.
stuff. I mean, authors might want to argue with me on this, but I think it's true. All of the stuff that you create, it's valuable, but frankly, they're all the byproducts of a
Mm-hmm.
process you are putting yourself through. All of that
Absolutely.
can be taken away from you, and from a bunch of authors it has. You've still got it. You can still continue to create. And honestly, that's kind of the point, I would say, after like a lifetime or an experience of being an author. By the end, I think you should be able to look at yourself or ask yourself, how am I different from
Right.
going through this process? If your only metric is I sold X number of books and
Mm-hmm.
here's everything that I've done, and maybe at the end of 50 books, you're still exactly the same person you were as when you started, I would want to ask, are you sure you're doing it the right way? Because this process is so intensely human to a level most humans never get to. It
Right.
has to change you. Any closing thoughts along those lines?
I absolutely love that. And I'm actually going to take that away from this interview. Somebody asked me yesterday, a friend asked me, like, how do you come up with all this stuff? And he was like, it was legitimate. It wasn't like a joke question. And I was like, I think it's just a mixture of my background. I've always tried to integrate things that didn't really belong together. And maybe that's like a metaphor for myself, where I didn't feel like I belonged in certain places. And that's true. The places that I've been up in, my career, professional, to my marriage, it's like, you look at it on the surface, it doesn't seem like it fits, but it's finding the story in those unfamiliar elements every time. And it doesn't matter what the setting is, whether it's science fiction, horror, romantasy, fantasy, whatever, that's just window dressing. The characters are representations of moods and of ideas that I have. And how can I put myself into them? How can I have it connect together, but then say something bigger than what is me? And I think I've always tried to, through my service in the military and everything, I've always tried to, how can I connect to something bigger? How can I connect to that bigger thing? I'm
Mhm.
always trying to do that. That's one of the mantras for my life in general. Like, how can
Amazing.
I plug in? And I feel like today
Mhm.
we're so encouraged to be insular and do everything yourself, and you don't need anybody. And I'm like, that is the biggest lie that's ever been told.
Yeah.
If you think you don't need anybody, just try and survive a couple of days without modern infrastructure. See how long you
Yeah.
last. You'll be
This whole
outside really
hype
quick.
about
Yeah.
there's this hype right now about like it's going to be within the next couple of years we're going to see what is it $1 million founders
Mm,
who built super successful brands completely alone only with like AI, and I look at that and
false.
go, that is not a life goal. That
False.
sounds boring.
It
I
sounds
mean, the
terrible.
dream is to do it with friends. Keith, where can folk find you online and jump on your mailing list, follow your podcast? In 30 seconds, what's your podcast, and why are people enjoying it?
My podcast is called Serious and Limnic. You can find it on Spotify. I think they like it just because it's very authentic, very
Yeah.
homegrown. Clearly, no professional work went into it at the time. You can find me on keithhayden.net. That's where all of my stuff is. I do have a mailing list if you want to check it out. I also got a YouTube channel that is very active, Digital Novelist at Digital Novelist on YouTube. And I publish a lot of my video, audio stuff there, and some occasional readings and stuff too.